Ever curious about diving into the world of real estate or property investment? In today's episode, we're sitting down with Anam, a 22-year-old entrepreneur who turned his unfair advantage into a thriving boutique hotel business in Sri Lanka. Join us as we explore Anam's journey from overcoming challenges to managing his hotel, gaining insights that could inspire your own path in the industry. Without any further ado, here's the episode.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the Curious Coconut Podcast. I'm Tong, and I'm here joined with my wonderful co-host Adi. We're also here with a very special guest, Anam. Actually, Anam and I, we've met a few years back at uni, actually, when I was still in Melbourne. Anam and I, we bonded through talking about business and just because we lived in the same building, we just got closer that way as well. But for those that don't know Anam, how about you introduce yourself, Anam, to everyone else?
Yeah, sure. My name's Anam. I'm a student at UniMeld. Yeah, I love computer science. I love startups, and I'm very grateful to be here.
So, could you tell us what do you do for work, or if you're not working, how do you spend your days usually when you're not doing uni stuff, that is?
Yeah, sure. So normally, I do work. I still work part-time. I'm working at the RACV City Club as just a front office receptionist, which is like a hotel and a private members club. So that's what I'm doing on like my non-uni days. But even on my uni days, like after studying and stuff, I do things like I joined the volleyball club at uni, which is something that's actually been taking up a bit of my time. It's really interesting. Never played volleyball before, but I actually really like it. And I've also just joined this committee at my uni, which is like the Startup Link Society at UniMelb. So I just wanted to be way more involved in the space at UniMelb.
Awesome. One thing that I've come across a while back actually, and was your project, the Anam Hotel,
Mm.
which I kind of want to focus on today because I thought that was really interesting. Um, could you please share us with our listeners the story behind the Anam Hotel and what inspired you to start this project?
Yeah, sure. So around 7 months ago, I started this boutique. Well, 7 months ago, we opened our doors for this like the boutique colonial hotel in Sri Lanka. It's in like the central Colombo area, so it's like pretty convenient for travelers that are foreign to the country. Yeah, I started this because not relevant to my field or anything I'm studying, but I was working at a hotel for about a year at that point, and I learned so much just being there, and I never took it seriously because it's just my part-time job. I need some allowance for uni, but a lot of the things I learned made me think like, hey, this doesn't sound that hard. A lot of people are already doing it. Why don't I just try? I'm not going to lose anything. And yeah, that's kind of how I started the Anam Hotel. And 7 months strong, it's going pretty good. 3 months ago, we just turned profitable. So yeah, hopefully we'll see how it goes long term.
It's really amazing to hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
like 4 months in, you already started making a profit. So that's great to hear. I'm just wondering, um, what was how'd you get the funding for it? Because I think to make a hotel, like to buy the land, it's quite expensive to start. And
It
you're
is, yeah.
obviously a university student. So how'd you achieve that?
Well, the truth is, like, there's obviously some nepotism involved. When it came to funding and stuff like that, I had like zero cash funding. All I was just given a rundown building, and this was around in August of 2023. I was given a rundown building, so I really had a choice. So that's why I took the semester off in August of 2023, and I took that second year of July off to actually be working full time at my job here, while paying for repairs, paying for just setting up the hotel and stuff like that. And it's an old building, so this repairs took over 3 to 4 months just to do. And I was working like 5 to 6 shifts a week here. The good thing is when you earn in a developed country and you translate that money back into a developing country, it's a lot easier to do things. But I took the semester off to basically work full time here and to ensure that I can get this hotel up and running and started.
That's amazing. And what inspired you to like start building this hotel? Like, was it your previous job? Um, since you were working at a hotel?
Yeah, it was definitely the previous job. It made me think like there's opportunity here, like in the hotel industry. And it's even though it's highly monopolized, I still think that, sometimes the monopolized industries are the best industry to crack into, which is what I thought. And the other thing, that really pushed me to do this was I just wanted to try something different, because I had startups that I'd done before, and it was different because the main purpose of those startups was like I need to make as much money as possible to buy the things that I don't really need to impress the people I don't like. That's from Fight Club, and that's really true. You
Yeah.
know, and it wasn't. And when I shifted my direction to, okay, you know what, we're living in an influencer generation. I'm not trying to be a social media influencer, but I want to try and build my brand. What's the best way other than putting my name on a building? And that's kind of the direction I went forward towards. Like that was some of the small parts when I first started the hotel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned earlier that you're currently working at a hotel back
Mhm.
in Melbourne. And then you've taken that experience that you've acquired from this hotel and then transferred it onto your own hotel. But then since you're just working like at the front desk, how do you know all of the ins and outs of the hotel? Would you
So
already?
that's actually, yeah, that's a good question. I would purposely have meetings with my managers and stuff like that. I wouldn't tell them I'd be doing this kind of thing, but I'd purposely, like when they'd have their manager meetings, I just ask, hey, can I come along? Can I just see what you guys are talking about? And they talk about like three main things. They talk about like unit measurement costs, which are like how much does a room cost to keep and maintain per night, and how much do they need to sell that room, that singular room per night in order to make a profit. These are the meetings that the managers would have and not with the receptionist. And another thing with my hotel, like the hotel that I'm working at right now, is that they have so many people that come in. They're like fully booked all the time, and they've got no social media, they've got no legit marketing, they've got none of that. But somehow they're always fully booked. And that's when I spoke to my like main manager about that. He said they get all of their revenue from word of mouth, and that's just from them. Like it's so simple that they're so successful because all they did was focusing on, for every guest that came in, that guest would have the best experience possible for whatever they're paying. Even if it's paying $100 a night or $500 a night, it's going to be an equal and best experience possible for that guest, so that they would go and tell their friends. And that's the kind of policy that I've adapted into the Yanam. Like 7 months in, I've spent $0 in marketing. And that's crazy because I always like pressure it to my staff. Like at the end of the day, no matter what, customer's always right. Customer comes first. We do everything for the customer. You know, and that was the main thing for me that I
Yeah,
learned
and
from like my hotel.
I really love that. Like that, because a lot of people they might have a hospitality job, but they might be distressed about it. But you actually took it the other direction. You're like, I'm gonna learn as much as I can from this hospitality job and use that in my own business. So I love how you flip that mindset.
Yeah, I mean, at the start it wasn't like that. I won't lie. Like at the start, I hated the job and stuff like that. And it
Yeah,
was like scary with your colleagues and stuff. They're the same role as you, and they're like 30, 40 years older than you. So that was
yeah.
like a little bit like scary. And it's also because before that, I was working 4 months as a night auditor. So I learned a lot of the hotel metrics and hotel revenues by being a night auditor 4 months before I became receptionist.
Wait, so
You
what's a
know,
night auditor? I have no idea what that means.
So a night order is basically like from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. At the end of the PM shifts, we have
Yeah,
a night shift.
yeah.
And during that night shift, we have to go ahead and balance all the accounts, balance all the payments that went through, and ensure that like everything's cashed up correctly. So
Oh,
I'd have
okay.
to see like how much the hotel is making every day, how much each employee has collected in payments and stuff. And I did that for 4 months night shift while doing uni, which is horrible,
Yeah,
but I learned a lot from that
yeah,
as well.
yeah. And another question I have is, how do you think the hospitality industry is in Melbourne compared to in Sri Lanka? Like, are there any major differences? And how do you go about that?
Honestly, like in Melbourne, I can only speak for the CBD. The thing
Yeah.
is, I can't speak for the resorts and stuff like that because I haven't been outside of Melbourne CBD. But outside of Melbourne CBD, I heard it's really good. But inside the CBD, it's your typical corporate lifestyle, corporate layout. Very corporate hotels, very like recently I just stayed at the Ritz, just for like a staycation. And it was the same thing. It was like, oh, you're here for a corporate booking or you're here for leisure? And like that's the first thing they ask you, but I'm obviously here for leisure. And if I compare it to Sri Lanka, even the Colombo, which is a central city, it's tourist oriented. It's
Hmm.
so oriented towards the customer that they know they're coming. The hotels here and the hospitality industry here, they know that people coming to the CBD are people who live in the regional areas or people who travel from overseas, either experiencing Melbourne for the first time or they're just regional Australians trying to get a city escape, or most of the time it's a corporate booking. So yeah, but the service when it comes to people like treating people well and stuff like that, I think Australia does it really well. And I'd say it's probably better than Sri Lanka the way they treat people here, because it's true. Like Australians are the nicest people. You know, we've heard that all growing up, and that I felt like that is true when I came here, and
You
I
know what?
definitely saw
I'll
that in the
disagree to
hospitality.
that. I'm Canadian, so I think Canadians are the nicest
Oh,
people.
yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah, Canadians are very
Um,
nice. Yeah.
and the thing is, like when I first came to Australia, not to offend anyone, but I didn't really like the customer service. Like customer service
Okay.
was really poor compared to
Yeah.
what it was back in Canada. So it was a
Okay.
downgrade for me. But if I compare it to like India, right? Because that's where I'm originally from.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess it's much better than I guess it would be in India or like a place like Sri Lanka. So I don't know. I can't complain, I guess.
I mean, it depends. You know, if you go to Mumbai or
Oh
you go
yeah.
to like Delhi and stuff like that,
Oh,
they'll treat you really well.
yeah,
You know,
that's
stay in
true.
a nice hotel, they'll treat you really well, and they don't get paid nearly as much as they get paid here, and
Yeah.
they don't complain. They're happy. You
Oh
know?
no, the resorts in India are really good. Like I've stayed
Yeah.
in quite a few, and yeah, I think the customer service there is that's the next level because it's so cheap
Yeah.
as well. And the amount of value you get for that is just crazy.
Is this something you've incorporated into your business's culture, like from the get-go?
So when I was hiring my staff, so when I flew back to Sri Lanka and stuff,
Mhm.
to hire like my housekeeping attendant and my receptionist and stuff like that, the main thing was for me, it was like how confident they are when they speak. And you know, that's hired me because I don't care about the other personality stuff like that. That they can change. I believe people can change. So for me, it was how confident when they speak. And the way I try to incorporate them to always be like customers always right was actually it was at the start it was not good. At the start they would because I'm actually overpaying my staff. So Shangri-La, which is you guys all know Shangri-La, Shangri-La pays about 30,000 rupees, uh, like 30,000 rupees per month for their receptionist. I'm paying 50,000 rupees per month, and I'm just a small boutique hotel compared to Shangri-La, right? So at the start, they were doing like a really good job. They were making effort and everything, but that slowly would pave down, right? Because if you're not like on them, or if you're not like being by their side and stuff like that, the effort and everything would reduce because they feel comfortable and complacent, which is something as a business owner we have to like look out for our staff, right? Because they make the business at the end of the day. So the way I wanted to incorporate it was the better you treat the staff, I mean the better you treat the customer, the better you're going to get paid. And the way I measured that was around my second, no, the third month of operation. I instead of doing a review bonus, so I said for every review you guys get, for every good review you guys get, you'll get a bonus, right? No hotel does that, but I just thought, okay, maybe I'll try that. But we wouldn't get that much reviews, and when we do, it would be like just like small issues like cleanliness and stuff like that. You know, things that my housekeeping staff should be taking care of. So I thought, okay, this approach isn't working. What is going to make them more beneficial? And then I thought, okay, something completely unorthodox. Every time our revenue hits a certain target, they get a 50% bonus on their base salary. So on my third month, I did that. So what it was is like let's say I'm just gonna give dummy numbers, right? Dummy numbers is let's say if the hotel makes $1 million a month, right? And you guys are both getting paid $50,000 each, you will each get an additional $25,000. So you can potentially make 1.5 of your base salary every month as long as you hit these revenue targets. And then
Whoa.
after that, I would have my staff consistently coming to me and how do I treat this staff better? How do I treat this customer better? How do I do this? How do I do that? They were making so much more initiative because I set them a target that benefits me, but most importantly, benefits them. And if they're consistently hitting that target, they're consistently being overpaid. So keep in mind, remember, Shangri-La pays 30,000 for full time. I'm essentially offering them 75,000 for the same hours, less workload, but it's the effort, you know, because the purpose for me isn't money, right? The purpose for me is building my brand and like just trying to make a real impact in this world. When my previous businesses I tried, when the purpose was money, that's why I never succeeded. But when my purpose is for money, the profit I make, I should give it back to my staff. And that's kind of the approach that really changed everything for me.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really interesting way of approaching like customer satisfaction.
Mhm.
Because you're encouraging the employees to give their best. And even though that's through their monetary value, right? But I think a lot of people like that's just what they want. But
Yeah.
as long as it gets them to do their job better, I think it's worth it in the end. And since you're not completely attached to the money, you're able to look beyond that and focus on just creating the brand that you want.
Yeah.
So I love that. I'm just curious, like, how did you figure out like the site for the hotel? Like, did you do market research and try to find a location that's good for you, or was it kind of just random?
It's my mom's building.
Oh, it's your mom's building.
Yeah, she bought it a while ago. So
And is
it's
it just like,
no,
was it in a good location
yeah.
from the start?
It just happened to be in a very good location, like 200 meters away from the biggest beach,
Oh,
20 meters
okay.
away, like 200 meters away from the biggest train station.
Yeah.
So yeah, it just happened. I was just very lucky. There's no market research when it comes to location.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
pure
that's
luck.
all right.
But it's
And then
taking what you have, right? And then kind
Yeah,
of using the money
capitalizing
that
on it.
you earn, yeah, using the
it's
money
like
that you
it's
were
the unfair
earning.
advantage that I have. It's like
Yeah.
leverage the unfair advantage.
Yeah.
So
And how did you
definitely.
go about the repair process? Because like you spent like 3 or 4 months just repairing the building. Like,
yeah.
because you were obviously in Melbourne at that time, right? So how did you manage that?
So it was hard, but it was manageable at the same time because I had an uncle who used to work in hospitality and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But he worked in hospitality in Sri Lanka, so they never make crazy good money. So my uncle would essentially just call me daily and stuff like that, tell me like this is what has to be done, this is why everything has to be done. So the main issues were like we didn't even have working ACs. And ACs are so expensive because Sri Lanka was going through a huge political crisis where if you wanted to get anything into the country, you're gonna have to pay like import tax, you're gonna have to pay duties on it, and then on top of that, you gotta go bribe the customs officer,
Oh
which is
no.
which is nuts. But you have to do that if you want to get stuff done. And
Yeah.
I never lived in Sri Lanka, so I really like I depended on my uncle quite a lot for helping me like do these kind of things. Like he would tell me what needs to be done and stuff like that. And then I would have my targets of trying to work as much as possible here, send everything back, and make sure everything's done to the best quality I can. And I'm still doing repairs today, but it's no longer like just breaking the bank anymore. Just trying to consistently improve it. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Wow. What do you think would be the biggest challenge that you've faced so far overall, ever since opening up the Annam Hotel?
Biggest challenge I'd faced so far was I think the second month, right, was a really bad month. The second month
Mhm.
was really bad because it was so disorganized and stuff, and I had to be here because uni was just about to start. So I couldn't really do much. However, it was so bad to a point where I wasn't able to pay my stuff. And my housekeeping attendant, well, my housekeeping manager basically, he's got 4 kids to provide for. What I had to do was I had to lie to my bosses basically, but they know this now. But I had to like tell my bosses like, "Hey guys, uni's starting in a couple of weeks. Uni's actually starting in 3 to 4 weeks. Can I just work full time right now? I can still do it." So
Mm.
I skipped about the first 2 weeks of uni, worked the first 3 weeks of uni actually, worked full time so that I was able to still pay my staff, still pay them both, and like still be able to make sure I have food for when I'm right here. So I
Wow.
guess the second month was arguably like, the biggest challenge I had to face was not keeping cash flow positive and being able to pay my staff because I don't eat, that's not a big deal. But if my staff's kids don't eat, that's my head. That's my responsibility, you know?
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. Like you just put it upon yourself completely and then made
Yeah.
sure your staff had like the resources or like the monetary funds to support their families.
Mhm.
I'm just like how are you? Because there's a economic downturn, um, and I don't know if people are like traveling as much or um doing as much stuff for leisure. So, is there anything you've thought in that direction? Like, if the hotel industry, isn't doing so well, like what would you do with it?
So
Mm-hmm.
what we've actually been doing nowadays is that we've actually been calling a bunch of companies that are based in Colombo, like a lot of tech companies and stuff like that. And I've
Mm-hmm.
just been asking them like, "Hey, do you need corporate bookings for people who live in Gaul, or do you need corporate bookings for people who live in Kandy and stuff like that?" And that's actually changed a lot of things for us because when these key people come down from like Kandy or Gaul, which are like 3 4 hours away from the main city, they would stay for 10 nights at a time,
Mm-hmm.
like 7 to 10 nights at a time. And during the off season, I actually utilize corporate bookings to reduce the number of empty rooms that I have, because vacant rooms is money being lost, right?
Yeah.
That's what actually I've been doing. Like, been focusing a lot on corporate bookings. And the thing is, I can't lie. Like, a lot of these tech companies and stuff that are based in Sri Lanka, there are people I'm close with. There are people I know, like the CEOs and founders. There are people that my family knows. So I would leverage that. Be like, hey, I'm just a kid starting this. I can help you out if you want to help me out. And that's kind of how it went. And that's what I've been doing. That's how I protect myself from off seasons. Like right now, August is an off season, but we've been fully booked the last 21 days. And that's because 50% of all our bookings have literally just been 10 night stays, 15 night stays of like, I won't name them, but of corporate companies in Colombo.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, that's really interesting. I was actually just gonna ask you as well, like how do you know these corporations to begin with? Or do you just send them like an email? But yeah, that's good that you could leverage the network that you have currently to make sure that you
Sri
have
Lanka is
occupancy.
it is a small place. Sri Lanka, like there's only 23 million people and about 2 million Muslims, and it's actually just within the Muslim community. A lot of the Muslims there own a bunch of companies. So I kind of just leverage that. Like a lot of it's like, it's kind of like the rest of the world. Like you guys can choose to put this in the podcast or not, but it's kind of like the rest of the world where you have a bunch of big companies, but only a small percentage of people from a specific race or religion own all those companies. And the same thing kind of applies in Sri Lanka as well. So you just kind of have to like leverage that for your own advantage, the same way that, like companies in Australia or companies in the US, if you do the research on it, a lot of these big pharmaceuticals, big banks, big insurance are all owned by Jewish people, which is not a bad thing, but they work together. They keep their tight knit and stuff like that. It's the same kind of principle applies to Sri Lanka.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way of looking at it, right? I personally haven't thought of it that way, but it makes sense, right? Because, as much as you hate it, like people like to support other people who are similar to them. And like if you can understand a market from that perspective, like who owns majority of these companies or like businesses, then you can really understand like, okay, I understand my target customer better now. Now I know how I might be able to sell to them. So that's, I guess, a really big insight that not many people might think about.
Yeah.
Just out of pure curiosity as well, just for, I guess, everyone listening can get an idea, including myself and Adi, how big is the hotel?
Okay, so the hotel it's pretty small. It's like eight bedrooms. It's a boutique colonial hotel.
Okay, well, okay.
Yeah, our second location is it's going to be about similar in size, but we'll see. Because I actually just had a beta test for a second location, and when I say beta test, I would have my regulars from the Annam Hotel come to the Annam Light, which is what I was going to name the place. And it was a duplex apartment with 6 bedrooms, just testing it out. But the whole overall experience felt more like a shared house Airbnb thing. And I was beta testing for about a month. So like I would have guests, like my regulars come in and out of that, like the duplex that I was going to set up for free, because I wanted to see what their real opinions was. And it turns out like it wasn't actually a good idea to set up in a duplex.
Okay.
Yeah. But at the moment, the Annam Hotel, 8 bedrooms, all ensuite. So yeah.
Okay. It's good that you're experimenting. I think that's a good thing, right? Being so small, being able to do these micro adjustments that you do. Whereas if you were a lot bigger, you can't do this sort of thing. It's great to have that flexibility for sure.
I'm just wondering, is there much competition in Sri Lanka for these types of hotels? Because I've personally never been to Sri Lanka.
Actually, there's not. Like the main thing in Sri Lanka, you've got 2 categories. You've got your luxury resorts or your luxury hotels, or you've got your hostel or share houses. But there's no in between for like budget boutique, like budget luxury is what I'd like to call it. There isn't really good budget luxury in Sri Lanka. Because I'll tell you what, the luxury hotel market is so saturated right now. Like you guys are seeing articles every day of new luxury hotels being popped up. At the same time, like not every backpacker wants to be staying in hostels every time, especially when there's no really good community with that. Like nobody wants to stay in a hostel. Sometimes you want to pay and the thing is these hostels charge ridiculous prices because they know they can capitalize on foreigners. But that's not how I see it because I'm not a local. Like sure, I'm Sri Lankan by blood, but I'm not a local, right? So it's like in my mind, it's like kind of like a foreigner's mind coming in there. And if I was a foreigner, how would I be running my business to fellow foreigners coming to Sri Lanka? And
Mhm.
that's kind of the approach I went. So there isn't that many competitors and stuff like that, from what I know.
And what do you mean by like a boutique colonial hotel? Like, what does that entail?
So it's boutique colonial is basically just branding, but it's entails that because
Just fancy words.
just fancy word, but also the house is wooden is it's an old French home, I think, or like an old Spanish home.
Yeah.
Like when I say colonial, I mean like it's literally design interior like those houses back in the colonial days,
Yeah.
you know? And I say
Okay.
boutique because like each room has got like a pink theme or a green theme and stuff
Mhm.
like that as well. That's also there. And that theme actually matches the bathroom. So the bathroom is green, the room's green. The
Yeah,
bathroom's
yeah.
pink, the room's pink, you know? So that's like the kind of boutique vibe. Like
Okay.
W Hotel, you know, they're considered a boutique luxury hotel because they have different themes for each hotel and different themes for each room.
Oh, nice. And like, who are your like primary customers? Is it foreigners that you get, or like is it just like locals, as you mentioned, like for business purposes?
So the business purposes part, I think that they take about like 10% of the booking, 10 to 30% of the bookings, off season 30%, not off season 10%, because I don't want to prioritize corporate bookings at the end of the day.
Okay.
So the most of our customers actually, they're all majority like foreigners. Like when I say foreigners, we've got a lot, like about 22% of our demographic is from India. So you have a lot of
Okay.
Indian travelers coming out of Sri Lanka because you know that's really nearby.
Yeah.
And then the rest of them are like split between the UK, Australia, the US. We've had a couple, like actually more than a few from Israel. We've also had some from we've had a lot from China, a
Mhm.
lot of customers from China and stuff like that, which is good because you know I leverage the Chinese part. Whenever my customers come in, I always get my staff to tell them like, "Oh, our owner is also Chinese," you know, and stuff like that. They actually really like that. So
Wait,
I'm not
you're not Chinese though. You lived in Hong Kong, right?
yeah, I'm not Chinese by blood, bro. But like you know, my grandparents moved there in the '60s. I got the
Okay.
passport and everything,
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just leverage that. I say that, you know.
Yeah, just
But
finding ways to connect with your
yeah,
customers, right?
exactly. Because at the end of the day, we're all TCK, right? We're all
Yeah.
third culture kids.
Yeah.
So
And the other thing I'm wondering is like when you first started, like maybe like open the doors, right? How did you get your first customers?
first customers, how
Like, did
did
you
we
do
get
any advertising or like marketing or like how did you advertise the hotel?
we priced it really low.
Okay.
We
The
priced it
classic. Okay.
super low. Yeah.
Yeah.
So normal ongoing rates for similar hotels like that were about like let's just say 5x. I was
Yeah.
pricing it for about 1 to 2x.
Okay.
Yeah. So literally about like, you know, 25% to 20% of what the average going nightly rate is for a hotel like that is what I was
Hmm.
pricing it for about the first couple weeks just to get people in, just to get people talking about it.
Okay.
That's how we got our first customers in. And then from day of opening, the get go was word of mouth, word of mouth, word of mouth. That's how we're gonna make it because I'm not good enough at marketing, and it's not something I want to invest my time and stuff like that. I want to talk to people, and I want that to be marketing because just before 20, 30 years ago, marketing was mainly in news and TV. Other than that, you'd have to rely on people talking to them and stuff like
Hmm.
that, you know? And being a people person is so crucial to like having a good business, especially in hospitality.
No, I think word of mouth is definitely the best way to
Yeah.
gain new customers because if someone really like because marketing always feels like forced, right? Like let's say
Yeah.
you have an ad, like oh it's like why is this ad? I don't want to look at it. But if your
Yeah.
friend tells you about the same thing and you trust that friend, like of course you're gonna be able to like oh next time I go to Sri Lanka, like maybe I'll visit this place.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's you listed on all of these websites, right? Like booking.com, Agoda, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
But it's just marketing that you haven't paid on like a single cent. Like you haven't even boosted your hotel or anything like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, I did pay $22 for my verified badge, but that's just
Okay.
again for me to put on my Instagram bio, be like, hey, by the way, look, you know I have this, right?
Okay.
Wait,
Okay,
so it
But
costs
yeah,
$22 to get a
yeah,
verified
yeah.
badge on
22
Instagram?
Aussie a month. Dude, it's 22 Aussie a month. It's like a Netflix subscription to
Okay.
keep the verified badge.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's expensive, kind of low key.
Yeah,
That's
it's
low key
pretty steep.
expensive.
Low key bet. Yeah.
for the blue one, right? Is it the blue verified thing?
Yeah. I think
Ah.
I have the blue verification badge on it. So that's 22
Right.
bucks a month. And I did pay $35 to get 5,000 followers just to look cool. Because I really don't use social media for any marketing at all. Like I get fully booked without social media. So I just okay, I'll just buy 5,000
Just for
followers,
the
35 bucks.
legitimacy, right? Because people
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
look at that nowadays.
Oh, 100%, dude. They'll think, whoa, 5,000 followers? This guy must be the shit.
Mm.
Dude, come on, man.
Yeah.
Anybody can buy followers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just for the optics, right? Like when you're
100%.
starting out, you gotta seem professional. You gotta make sure that people trust you, or else like no one's come and stay at a place where like it's like really cheap, but it looks really good in the
Yeah.
photos. But like there's so many scams these days, so it's
So
good that
many.
it's really important to make sure that you have a good online presence, at least like a believable online presence that people can trust.
Great starting point doing that. Yeah, I do agree. Any future goals for the Annam Hotel? Do you want to focus on expanding it, or what's your primary goal right now, and where do you see it maybe like a year from now or 5 years from now?
So, well, I haven't done much future planning because I know I should. And I used to be that kind of guy, like, because the thing is, with my previous startups that I tried, I would future plan so much and I wouldn't even follow through, So that's kind of why I just stopped future planning. I just thought, okay, what's the plan today? What's the plan for next month? What's the plan for the next 2 months? And I keep it like that. Right now, I'm debating so I'm actually waiting for the end of the elections in November in Sri Lanka because, like I said, it's a highly, I shouldn't say this out loud, but it's a highly corrupted political game. And that's the same across the entire world. Some places just blatantly obvious, some places it's not. And it's crucial for me to wait for these elections coming up in November because that's going to change the game of tourism in the sense that so right now if you want to come to Sri Lanka, you guys got to pay a certain thing called this ETA visa fee or something like that for all foreigners. They're planning on removing that. And that's what the next government's the leader of the opposition party is planning to do by November or September, or well, actually by end of November. If elections go well, I would most definitely be trying to expand into a second location. So it's either expanding into. I've got two options. Option one would be to basically rent out a house this time, like rent out a house in Columbus, like Columbus Central location. Or option two would be like use an estate that I have in Kandy, which is another like tourism area and stuff like that. But that would just require so much investment, so much work to do. But I wouldn't need to be paying mortgage. I wouldn't need to pay a rent. So it's like it's me picking my battles right now.
Interesting. And like, have you thought about Airbnb and like potentially, because you said you were testing on the duplex idea. What if you just turn that into an Airbnb?
Yeah, that was actually what my parents were suggesting. I do turn that into an Airbnb. But the only reason I didn't want to do that is because when we did the maths and stuff like that, the electricity bills on apartments are way more higher than it seems to be. And doing an
Okay.
Airbnb compared to selling 6 rooms individually does not make sense. Like when you sell 6 rooms individually, you make way more money than just selling the entire place per night.
That's
And
true.
you can do Airbnb rooms, but that's just a lot more effort and it's already small. Like it's a duplex. If I want to do Airbnb rooms and stuff like that, I have to keep a receptionist in a duplex. That's just
It
inconvenient.
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I was 100% something we wanted to do, like create an Airbnb for it. But then at the end of the day, we're just gonna use the apartment for when I actually need to go to Sri Lanka. I got a place to stay. I only take out revenue from DNL. That's kind of the main thing.
Okay. Sounds good. I think, yeah, we've had a good discussion about your hotel business. And I think it's been really insightful. I want to touch base on like what you're doing with Startup Link because I think that's also a really cool thing that's coming out of University of Melbourne.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about like what your role is at Startup Link and how you got started in it?
Yeah, so my role at Startup Link is the external relations officer. So basically I'm part of the team that has to get as many sponsors, many partnerships, speakers, and stuff like that. And honestly, I was just scrolling on Instagram and I saw that we had recruitment for it. And I thought, I have a startup, might as well apply. And there was a few different roles, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll apply for the external relations officer because that has to do with selling, that has to do with communicating with people outside of the uni. So I thought I'd apply for that. But the main thing, also the reason I applied for that is because I'm building my own professional relationship with these companies and sponsorships that I'm asking to come to UniMel for. So in a
Mhm.
way, there's also like a backhanded advantage for myself
Yeah.
by building a repertoire with these companies. And
And
by that, I just applied and that's it. I had an interview.
cool. And like, how do you go about approaching like these companies for your events? Like, what's your process like?
So, well, let's say for today, as an example, I had two meetings just before this. I
Hmm.
had a meeting with a company called Hex, which is I don't know if you guys heard it. Start with Hex. They're like an ed tech platform that basically creates like these startup accelerator programs, like and these fellowship programs and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
had a meeting with them today, and before that, I had another meeting with these alum foundation. So the way I got these two meetings was literally just from leveraging the University of Melbourne name and using that to uh, basically get a meeting and ask them, hey, do you guys want to come to our startup fair and stuff like that? You know, that I
Yeah.
think people underestimate. Like, sure, it's Australia's like number one university, but you're a number one university. You know, like look at Harvard, for example. Like what I said in my interview for the startup link was like, look at Harvard. Harvard, Stanford, and stuff like that. They're the number one universities in the US, but they're known for creating startups that make billions of dollars and change the world. Why can't that be UniMel? You
Mm.
know, we're number one too. Why can't that be UniMel? And I guess that's kind of the approach that I went with. And that's the same approach I'm using to attract these startup fair, these companies to come to our startup fair and stuff like that. We're actually having Red Bull. We're having a meeting with Red Bull pretty soon as well next week. So we'll see how that goes.
Mm.
But they're
Interesting.
not a startup though. Not they're just pre-seed.
You see. Um, yeah, wait, so what do you guys do at Startup Link actually? Do you
So our intention is to like bridge the gap between like students and getting into the startup industry. So when I say getting
Mm,
into the startup industry, it's basically what my president was like talking about was what they want to create more working opportunities for students to join startups and specifically for undergraduates because in University of Melbourne and Melbourne in general, a lot of these startups are geared towards only getting masters and PhD students. But some of the best startups are created by undergraduate students, you know? So why wouldn't you want to get them as talent or as hire, you know? So that's kind of what our goal is. Our goal is to essentially try and get students at UniMelb to be immersed into Melbourne startup culture and Australia startup culture in general, potentially get jobs, internships, and stuff like that. But in my like when I'm like I've gotten like quite close to our president and just talking to her and stuff like that. And one main thing was that I really wanted to push was long term is I want our society to basically because I'm going to be in UniMel for another 2 more years, and I made that very clear. Like I'll be in this society for 2 more years. But the main thing that I wanted to push was that sure we'll have our fairs, we'll have connections and stuff, but I want our society to be an incubator for producing startups that make a difference. You know, for
Oh,
making like
wow.
students have the belief that they're capable of creating these own startups. You know, it's the
Hmm.
same. It's the same concept. Like Facebook was no Google was a 17th search engine. MySpace came before Facebook and stuff like that. It's not about being the first. It's not about the idea. It's always the execution. You
Yeah.
know.
No, that's really cool. And I think that's a very good vision. Because Melbourne is definitely a great place, and University of Melbourne is amazing. There's so much talent that's unutilized.
So much. Yeah.
And like if you can just be the bridge to connect the talent to the startups that are looking for it, I think it could be a really good funnel for like University of Melbourne to be more like, tech savvy and like not just from research, but also like from
Yeah.
startup because they have amazing like the MAP program is pretty good, and they have all these other like programs at university as well that are
Mm.
like geared towards startups. But like having a student club where like students don't feel pressured by like others is really good as well. One other question I want to ask is from your point of view, what do startups look for in a student? Like, let's say I'm a student who wants to work at a startup. Um, how would I go about doing that? And what should I focus on?
Well, if I was if you as a student, like if I was a startup owner, what am I looking for in a student?
Yeah.
I'd say the only main thing, you know, after owning my own startup and stuff like that, is work ethic. You know,
What
you
do you
can
mean
be
by that?
talented, like you can be talented, you can be smart, but you got to have a high level of discipline because these startups, if they want to survive, you got to be disciplined in the sense that you need to be working. You need to not let things affect your mind and affect you emotionally. Yeah, sure, it's okay to have a bad day, but you can still do work while having a bad day. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have like I'd say a lot of people wouldn't agree to my approach. My approach is very you get it done or you don't, but it doesn't matter. You can have a bad day, you still got to get it done. You know,
Yeah.
That's kind of like how I choose to live my life. And people would say, oh, that's depressing. That's not, there's no balance in that. But I'm happy. I'm happy when I work. I'm happy when I grind. I get an ego boost every single time I'm in the library and I see other people leaving, you know? And I'd say, like, as a startup owner, when you have all the plates in your head, when you have to do marketing, when you got to do developing your MVP, when you got to develop like all your sales and stuff like that, and all of that's is in your head, you need somebody who's disciplined and who's got a work ethic, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say that's what, if I was a startup owner, that's what I would look for as in general, I'd say. But as a student, probably the innovative mindset, you know, because students bring in such a different perspective into things, you know, because they would have experienced life in a different way and they're still young. So, you know, when you're still young, you haven't had the harsh realities of life hit you. And I'm 21, so I'm not talking like I'm 30. I have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot more hard stuff to head on. But when you're younger and the harsh realities haven't hit you that much, like the realities of life, paying a mortgage and stuff, your mind is so free to still think. And I think
Yeah.
that's something like we have to leverage a lot in students. You know, Kanye said it the best, you know, like, I'm not going to listen to you if you're poorer than me or if you're older than me, you know, and I forget the poorer part, but you know what, Kanye had it right. Like,
Yeah.
it's the youth, they have the mind and stuff like that.
And yeah, like, because like youth is generally like a bit blissfully ignorant, right? Like they don't know all those other things.
Yeah.
So they're free to innovate. They have the freedom to just come up with new ideas and really like make them happen. Because other people might
Mhm.
be like, oh, that seems too impossible. But some like students, they might not even know that's impossible. So they just run with it. And sometimes it turns the impossible into possible. So you never know.
Exactly.
Wait, one other question I have is
Yeah, go
like,
for it.
because I know because I, as a student, I also wanted to work at startups, but I did not feel like I was competent. Um, do you have anything to say to those students who, feel intimidated by joining a startup? They want to try something, but they're not sure about themselves.
Ooh, a lot of pressure. Okay. Look, the truth is, what are you going to lose if you don't try? Huh? Somebody's going to laugh at you. Just be like, yo, you didn't do this. Oh, you didn't do that. At least you still tried. At least you got something and you learned from it, you know?
Yeah.
And you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that is so true. And if you worry about the doubts if you worry about the doubts of today, the realization of tomorrow will never come. The
Hmm.
things you want for tomorrow will never come if you're worried about the doubts today, you know? And
Yeah.
that's something that keeps me going. Like, for confidence and stuff like that, it's fostered. Confidence does not come from looking in the mirror and just be like, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna feel confident, stuff like that. Confidence has to be built. It has to be built from you doing something and then failing and then trying again. You know, I don't believe in pseudo confidence. I believe in confidence where I can look somebody in the eye and I know I can outwork them. So I'm not even going to say anything. Let them talk however much they want. I know I can outwork you. That's all that matters. That's real confidence, you know, in my eyes, at least.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I agree with like pretty much everything you said because, you know, like people are often scared by what other people might think, because of which they never do anything that they want to do.
Mm,
But for me, like, like when me and Tong started the first startup, we were super nervous, but then we are like, okay, like if I didn't do this, would I regret my life decisions? And I said, yeah, like I would regret it. So I'm like, okay, then there's no problem. I just need to do it to it. Like it doesn't matter whether it fails or like turns into something or not. It's just for me to be able to sleep at night, I know I need to give this a shot. And that's the same thing I did with the podcast or like any other ventures I go
yeah,
for, right? Like, because at the end of the day, it's my life, and if I don't live my life the way I want, like, I think I'm doing something wrong.
100%. Yeah.
I also feel like everyone has their own problems. At the end of the day, no one really cares about you.
Yeah,
Nobody does.
Like unless you become like really rich, then
Except
they're
your
like,
mom,
oh,
dude. Only your mom cares about you. And when you're rich, not nobody cares about you. They care about your money.
yeah, they
yeah,
just care about your money as well. They don't even care
Yeah.
about the process that took you to that level. They just say like,
hmm
oh, you've made that much money, and that's about it. That's about all.
Yeah.
But going back to Startup Link, because we're kind of diverting from the topic, uh, just one last question I have for you before we move to the closing section, Anam, is
Yep.
wait, actually, how long have you started Startup Link for?
How long I've been there? Like
Yeah,
about
how
2
long
months.
have you? Oh, just 2 months. Okay.
Yeah,
Have
just.
you have you learned anything from it that you were able to apply to the Anam Hotel at all?
Things I've learned from, I'd say, like, people management and, you know, professionalism in meetings. I'd say that's the two main things. When it comes to people management, it's like, oh, okay, there's such a diverse group of people, and you don't have any title or stuff like that. I'm just the ER officer. I'm not even the smartest guy in the room and stuff like that, and I never am most of the time. But I still think that I'm able to gather the respect of my peers and stuff like that, and even in a leadership standpoint, because I leverage their best interest. I always think in their perspective, and how, like, when I say I think in their perspective, I think, okay, what does person A want in the startup link, and as he's also my ER officer, what does he want in his mind? For example, you'd have like certain colleagues and mates be like, oh yeah, I got this contact, so I should contact them, which is understandable, right? But then sometimes they'd get offended by that, or they want to leverage that more, right? So what you do is you take advantage of that. You'd be like, oh, yo, it's great that you got this contact. See what else you can do. Try and go figure things out and stuff like that. I'd say the main thing that I learned from so far the startup link that I could bring into the Enam is just figuring out what people want, spitting that so that it works in my benefit. You know what I mean? Like it's like I got to think in your perspective. Like for you guys, you're here interviewing me for a podcast and stuff like that. And at the same time, in my mind, I'm like, yo, this is good for my brand. This is good for my image development and stuff like that, But
Mhm.
it could be spin, whereas if I'm trying to help you guys, but it could be different, You know what I mean?
Yeah, so it's a mutual relationship, and
It's a
like,
mutual relationship. Yeah.
yeah, just thinking like that, making sure that the other party gets as much benefit from
Yeah.
you as you do from them. It just goes a long way in, like, making business relationships and
Mhm.
maintaining them.
No, another question we actually like to ask our guests that come onto the podcast is about a favorite book and about a favorite podcast that they may have. Do you have any that you could recommend to our listeners?
Yeah. So favorite podcast, no brainer, the Curious Coconut podcast. That's the only one
Hey,
I'd recommend for everybody to watch and
let's
listen to.
go.
There we go.
But for favorite book, yeah, I've read like a few self-improvement books and stuff like that. You guys can even see the habit tracker behind me as well. That's from Atomic Habits,
Okay, yeah.
and stuff like that to track my daily stuff. But I'd say the real book that really hit me was by David Goggins, Can't Hurt Me, which is also a pretty generic book. Actually, it was two books. One of the books, Tom, you left it in my room a while back
Did
at
I?
Uni Lodge. Yeah, it was this Unfair Advantage. Do you remember this?
Ah, there
You
you
you left
go.
this at my room a while back, and
I was trying to find
this
that
book.
book.
Yeah, I didn't give it back to you.
Oh,
So
good.
Tell
Keep
this
it.
book.
yeah, this book was really helpful in terms of making me think that my situation could actually work to my benefit, rather than like just thinking, oh, I wish I had this, oh, I wish I had that. This book was actually telling me like, hey, you actually have a lot. You're in a good position. Use it. And I'd say that
Mm.
a favorite book, it wouldn't be my favorite book. I'd say the most useful book that I've had for sure, thanks to Thong. But my favorite book is probably Can't Hurt
Can't
Me,
Hurt
David
Me.
Goggins. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Great
think we
book.
did a book review of that a while back.
Yeah, we did.
The
I
Storm
read that
really liked
book.
it as well.
Yeah, I liked it.
He's a crazy
Cool.
guy.
Very crazy
Crazy.
man.
Yeah.
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 Superhuman.
Yeah, legit, dude.
Is there anything that you want to share with our audience? Like, this could be a plug for something or a way to contact you. Anything you want to say to them?
What do I want to say? There is no tomorrow. There's only today. Be happy in whatever you do, because if you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy when you're rich. You're not going to be happy when you're successful. You still have your brain, you still have your legs, you still have your eyes, you still have your ears. There's nothing to be sad about when you have all those four things. Be grateful and be happy. Yeah, that's all I have to say.
Sounds
Wow.
good.
Great way to end the
Well,
podcast.
yeah, that was a great message. And yeah, like, we wish you all the best with your future endeavors.
Thank you. You too,
Yep.
guys. Appreciate
Thanks for
it.
coming
ya.
on. See ya.
Bye.